Welcome to Talking Tuesday. I am your host, Fancy Quant, and today we're going to talk about working from home. So, just to lay a little background here before we really dive in here, working from home is very job specific. So yes, I'm somewhat making this video because we have the pandemic going on, right? COVID-19 and all that. But at the same time, I've also been working from home on and off for the past 5-6 years here. So I have a pretty good understanding of working from home, both from the pandemic perspective of everybody working from home, but also from a more feasible, reasonable perspective where I have been the one working from home and have had colleagues that are based solely in the office. I've also had the opportunity to be kind of rotating between office and working from home, and doing that has given me a very different perspective. So let's just dive on in. Okay, so as I mentioned, working from home is not for everybody. Some jobs, for example, like customer client-facing roles, you need to be in front of that customer. You need to be there to service them. Great jobs that would be in this category of not working from home would be someone, for example, like a teller, someone that's providing you food or services or goods, right? They need to be there to actually physically give you something. For example, let's say you're an electrician, right? You can't work from home because you have to go to the job site and you have to actually fix the problem. So there are many jobs where you cannot work from home. This video, though, is going to be focused on more or less jobs that can work from home. So there are some jobs that are kind of hybrid-ish jobs. So you think about customer service, you think you need to be in front of the customer. And yet, as we see a lot of retail going online, for example, like Amazon, there are always like those live chat windows and you can log in and chat with someone. Again, you could do that from home. There's no reason to actually be in the office. Okay, so my 3 big tips here that we're going to talk about is going to be, one is set up a schedule. So if you go online and you look at like the top 10 working from home tips, top 25, top 30, whatever, they're going to fall into these 3 categories. Setting a schedule is probably the most important piece of working from home. So when I first started working from home, I started out working like, I don't know, my usual 9 to 5, 9 to 6-ish, right? Or 8 to 5, depending on my job or schedule. And then all of a sudden I had extra work to do, or I took on extra projects, and then it started bleeding into like, I don't know, say 8 to 7:30, 8 to 9. And then it becomes really stressful because everybody's like depending on you, and you're working, instead of working, 40 hours, it goes to 50, into 60, into 70, and it just starts slipping away. And then everything starts bleeding together where it's like you can't get your personal life done, like, I don't know, take care of your kids, do the dishes, clean the house. You also can't get like your car, right, your car maintained, wash your car. It's hard to get grocery shopping done, right? Got to get your hair cut. All this stuff starts piling in. It starts bleeding out of control because like your schedules are kind of going together. So setting the schedule is key. For me, I have a pretty simple schedule. I get up. I don't always shower right in the morning, but usually I get up, I will have coffee. I try to like slowly ease into my day because I get up a little bit earlier. And then I try to take a shower and everything before I get going for the day. Though sometimes I take it at lunch, to be honest with you. But again, having a set schedule. So I know about when I get up every day. I get up, I drink coffee. Sometimes I read a book for a good half an hour, take a shower. If I have time to eat breakfast, I do. If I don't, sometimes I just skip it, right? It's just my normal schedule. And then I dive right into work, usually about like 8:30 to 9. I like getting on though a little early. So like 8:30, check all my emails, make sure I have no like meetings early in the morning. I have no chaos to deal with. And then I can kind of ease into my day and then really get going and be productive. Again, setting schedules though is start time, stop time, lunches, and breaks. So you need to look at the whole schedule here of, if you were at the office, so someone who's been in the office and working from home on and off during the same week, for example, I have noticed that I waste a lot of time in the office. And I don't know if a lot of people realize this from the pandemic perspective, where you go from office, full-time for so many years to all of a sudden a few months of working from home. So for me, I work from home quite a bit. And when I work from home for extended periods, I start like feeling extra stressed. Like I have all this stuff I need to do. I'm not productive. I need to get more work done. And, I start thinking about this when I go into the office all of a sudden, like the next day. I start thinking like, what am I doing? Am I actually working the full, 8, 9 hour shift? And a lot of times the answer is no. So for my office schedule, it's almost the same as my at-home schedule. I get into the office, I turn everything on, I check to see, if there's early meetings, if there's emails I need to respond to quite quickly. And then of course I grab my coffee mug and I go to the break room and I sit and I make a cup of coffee, and then I go back to my desk and I sit down, and then I kind of ease into my work. And then usually I start kind of getting going and other colleagues are coming in. And then it's like, hey, what did you do this weekend? Or, hey, you had a race yesterday. Like, how was that? Or you came back from vacation. Or, I don't know, your kid just graduated college. Like, tell me about that. And then I realize when I'm working in the office, there are hours and hours in the day where I don't necessarily am like working. So I'm not necessarily working 9 to 5. And I know a lot of people don't want to admit this, but there is downtime in a job, right? A lot of jobs have downtime, not all jobs. But a lot of jobs have somewhat a slow period or lulls, and a lot of times colleagues are chatting and communicating and building relationships, and that's completely fine. But the point I'm making here is that when you work from home, you need to keep that in the back of your mind, because when you work from home, right, you're not going to have those colleagues to kind of bug you and stuff. You might have a spouse or some pets or whatever, and it's good to interact and have non-work related interactions. But I would like to keep in mind here, do not overstress yourself with thinking you are going to be working and like glued to your desk the entire day. The second tip here is going to be finding a quiet location to work. So again, there are lots of different points online about working from home that fall into this category. But what you really need is you need a quiet place to work where you can actually focus. You're going to need good lighting. You're going to need a power source to plug in your laptop, your desktop, or whatever. You're going to need good wireless internet, of course. And then finally, you're going to need actual space to work and set up everything. So I work on a laptop. I actually have 2 laptops for work because I work for 2 different divisions. And then I also have like academic papers that I'm looking at and textbooks that I reference. And then I have work papers and work documents. So for me, having a lot of space is crucial. If I can't set it out, I'm not very productive. And on the space note too, like if you struggle to work on a laptop, you're not used to it, I don't know, you have poor eyesight, so for example, such as myself, it is nice to have a monitor. So I actually have a giant monitor here, and I can load up my laptop on there and look at it if I need to. If you do a lot of like reading documents on your computer, right, that's kind of a downside. I like to print mine, but I can do it on a bigger screen. It makes it easier. If you're doing a lot of Excel work, for example, having multiple screens is beneficial. Again, this is up to you, but having a good office setup is crucial. And then finally here for the location, you need to find quietness and you need to avoid distractions. So I work here in my office where I shoot my YouTube videos, but a lot of times I actually work over in my dining room. And one of the reasons is when I'm in my office, I have distractions like my actual computer, and then I'm checking other stuff like, I don't know, Facebook or something on my computer. And yes, when I'm at the office, I probably have my cell phone out checking, YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and, all this other stuff that's coming in. This is distracting in the office, so I try not to do a lot of it at the office. For home, I try to do the same thing. I try to put my cell phone somewhere where I can hear it because my colleagues contact me a lot through my personal phone. And then also, right, getting away from my YouTube space because I don't want to work on YouTube, be distracted, and check on my personal stuff on my personal computer. So I do actually work in my living rooms a lot. My cats like to sleep in my office as well. So by working in the living room or up at the bar at the kitchen, for example, I avoid having a lot of contact with my pets. My TV is actually in my living room, which is near my kitchen. So a lot of times I will avoid that, so I do not turn the TV on, right? Trying to avoid the little distractions, try to avoid the cell phones, the personal tablets. If you don't take it to work, try not to include it into your daily schedule unless you think you can handle it and structure your time so that you are both productive, but also can relax and enjoy the working from home benefits. All right, and the third and final tip here is going to be social connection. So this is probably the hardest part, I think, for most people. I've talked to colleagues who have worked from home for years who have complained they don't really like it, but they also don't want to move to a different location to be near our office. I have other buddies who work from home and absolutely love it. But the one thing that everybody consistently says is, I miss having a social contact with the office. So even if you have a vibrant social life outside of work, sometimes it's hard to connect. And so for me, so my office is structured really weird. I sit on a team of about 30 people. My office is spread across New York City, Boston, Dallas, I think California, somewhere in Arizona. So we sit across a wide range of areas. For me, I worked in the New York City office. I visited the Boston office quite a bit when I was up there. And then now I moved to Dallas, so I no longer have connection with them no matter what. But for me, I use Instant Messenger a lot. So we have like a chat system set up. So Cisco has like Jabber, Microsoft has some type of chat, Skype has chat. Microsoft has Microsoft Teams, I think that's what I was thinking, or Link. But doing chat is like I think a non-formal way of communicating. It's more or less like just chatting. So a lot of times I will hop on and it's been a few weeks and I'm like, hey, I haven't talked to this colleague for a while. And so then I'll see that they're online on the side and then I'll message them. And just be like, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend, right? Or I don't know, you had some big event that went on, a vacation or something. Try to use chat as an informal connection. It works really well. I really like it. I think it helps a lot. The second point here is going to be email. So I'm a little different and a little weird for most people. But when I'm at the office, I chat with one of my colleagues. We talk a lot about gardening. So I like to garden. My colleague likes to garden. There's a whole relationship there on gardening. And a lot of times I'm doing like yard projects. So I'll pull out my cell phone and I'm like, oh, check out my watermelons this year. And I put, 12 fruit trees in, which is crazy. Check this out, right? Or I don't know what to do here. I have this problem with this plant. My colleague will be like, oh, that's, X, Y, and Z, add some Epsom salt or something. Anyways, but I like to share photos because like I'm on my phone just showing them in person, but I can't do that from working from home. But what I've been trying to do somewhat is actually write like an informal email. So when you see the email, you should know this is not a work email. It's not a professional email. It's literally me reaching out to my colleagues saying, hey, check out, I just put a bunch of sod in. My yard looks great. I broke down and took your advice and did X, Y, and Z. Like, what do you think? And then we have a few emails back and forth, and then we can just end it like a conversation, right? That conversation might take a day, it might take 2-3 days, but you can try to get that connection in there as well through the email. And then the third point here for the communication is going to be having formalized meetings, but treating them like you're in the office. So my boss does a great job at this, so a big thumbs up to her. Whenever we start the calls, she'll start asking about so my boss doesn't sit in the same city that I sit in, but she'll ask on the calls like, hey, how is Dallas? How are they handling the pandemic? How are things shaking out? I heard they're opening, borders. What do you see there? What are you reading? And we'll have like a full team discussion. So team members from all over that are on the call, we'll all be talking about, oh, on this side of Dallas, I saw X, Y, and Z. And then somebody else like, oh, I'm in this other city. And, I see, that it's really opening up and it's getting better. And somebody else saying, it's getting worse. But we have this informal conversation at the beginning of the calls. Sometimes it will happen at the end of the call. But in general, I think it's important to treat it like a business meeting in the sense that a lot of times in the office, I'll show up 10 minutes early. 2 or 3 other people roll in. We're chatting about, school or weather or, the news or politics or something comes up and we sit and we chat about it. Hopefully not politics because that's never a good topic at the office. But but we chat about just simple things. And it's usually before the meeting and then, right when the meeting starts, we all dive into the meeting. That's exactly how our calls work for me and for my team. We all just start getting into okay, this is the project, this is what we're discussing, this is the analysis, this is the PowerPoint, right? We have screen sharing going on and everything, right? So there's not a lot of difference in the communication, but again, if you work at it, you try a little harder, you pretend essentially like it's more like an actual work environment, I think you'll do a lot better and be far happier. Okay, and I just wanted to point out a few points here in general that I think are important to realize for working from home. Like I mentioned before, being in the office and being at home simultaneously in 1 week, you start realizing that when you're in the office, most people aren't that productive. So this should not be a surprise. I know a lot of managers probably getting upset by this comment. But yeah, we're not that productive in the office a lot of times because there's distractions. I blame a lot of this though. If you want to blame someone, blame management. A lot of companies are going to these flat structures and we optimize and put in all these people side by side. And then you can see everybody and it's distracting. It's not the best way to focus at an office. Open layout offices are great for some jobs, but most jobs, such as mine, it's challenging when you work on the, technology, STEM, creative, math, stats kind of side. But it's definitely a good environment for business people. But again, it's not that productive for a lot of people because it's hard to get an optimal office layout. If your employees can actually set something up, for example, like my living room or like my dining room or my kitchen or my office, and have a nice working space, they will be far more productive. And that somewhat leads me to talk a little bit about the industry as a whole. So I'm talking quantitative finance, but I'm actually talking more broadly as the US economy, probably even globally. I was convinced at the beginning that we would have the pandemic and, we'd see working from home, and then senior management is typically older. They're not usually big supporters of technology and working from home, and that we would see essentially a strong shift as soon as the pandemic's over back to working in the office full time and no working from home. So in preparation for this podcast here, I reached out to a few friends and started chatting with them and said, hey, what is your company doing? Do you think you're going to be going back to the office? How long is it going to be? And then do you think you're going to be continuing to work from home in the future, like after everything's over? Do you think it's going to be an option? Do you think it's going to be mandatory? Like, what do you think? And then people internally, different companies, right? Their senior managements were all issuing MOs and things, right? They were stating that a lot of them, to my surprise, are thinking that it's actually beneficial to work from home. So a few different companies were stating their staff is actually more productive. This actually does not surprise me in many ways. Okay, so we need to think about this right from mental state. It's dangerous because a lot of people that work from home might be working excessive hours because they feel like they have to prove something, right? I'm actually being productive. I need to prove that to you. Yes, I feel this stress constantly, so it's hard to kind of balance it. But again, if people are more productive, it might be a better benefit to work from home. From a business perspective, it saves you a ton of money if you can reduce office space. One solution I would like to see is reducing office space to the point that teams can come and meet and interact perhaps throughout the week. Like, I don't know, say you have a team meeting on a Wednesday and everybody gets together for the team meeting, and then everyone either works the day there or they just come in for the team meeting, interact, have personal relationships, and then go home and then go back to working from home. That's another option. Doing my rotational working from home, which I do quite a bit, working in the office, 2, 3, 4 days a week, and then working from home the other days. That's another trade-off you can do. But again, trying to figure out how to save money and focus on your employees' health and wellness and well-being is definitely something you should think about. And that leads me to talking about the big benefits for me from working from home is my personal health. So yes, it's stressful. Yes, it can be a negative. But for me, I actually eat far healthier. And I know a lot of people I've talked to have been eating a lot healthier during the pandemic because they can't just run down to that corner restaurant and grab lunch. So I make my breakfast, lunch, and dinner at home, 80-90% of the time. So I eat a lot healthier when I work from home. The second point here is you need to get out and exercise. So if you are working from home, get out of your house. Do not stay the whole day inside. It's not good for you. If something as simple as taking a walk around the neighborhood, which I do, I walk around my neighborhood. If you got a dog, take your dog for a walk. If you have a spouse, go on a walk, in the evening, maybe take a lunch walk, take a break. Try to get outside and walk and do other things. Also for me, I have a treadmill at home, which I purchased. For those of you that don't, but you go to the gym, again, not commuting adds all of a sudden extra time. For me, it's an hour each way, 40 minutes each way. So if you think about that, if I hit the gym, I could drive down there, say 10 minutes, exercise at the gym for, 45 minutes to an hour, if you want to stay an hour, and go home, that's an hour 20, right? You're saving a ton of time by not commuting. And again, you're exercising and you're being healthier. So try to take advantage of these as well from working from home. For me, it is very beneficial. I'm a lot healthier when I actually work from home versus having to go into the office. I just don't work out as much. I don't eat as healthy. It's just not a good situation for me in many cases and many jobs that I've had. And next, we're going to talk about avoiding micromanagement. So old style management, old company cultures, there is a ton of micromanagement when you work from home. So I've seen companies, which just drives me nuts. You'll have your chat window, which is awesome for communicating with people. But some companies take this as an opportunity to monitor their employees. Oh, you weren't online, for the last half an hour. Where were you? What were you doing? I think this is ridiculous in itself. I'm not a fan of it. Luckily, most companies I've worked for don't utilize the chat in that way. It's not a company culture, but there are some that have. And so just to touch on the micromanagement portion here a little bit as an employee, so it's partially your fault as an employee, and it's partially management's fault. So the first one's going to be making sure you communicate quickly and be available. So yes, I've seen people that work from home, they think it's like a vacation, they don't have to pay attention, right? It's so easy and fun, and like they're gone for 3-4 hours at a time. You're a bad employee. That's just how it is. If you're working in the office, I've noticed these same employees are employees that are also missing from the office. So I don't think working from home causes it. A bad employee is a bad employee regardless. If you want to earn trust though as an employee, you should be available. So again, I also think management needs to be a little lenient on this because sometimes you're gone, right? Like I need to run and grab coffee, or I went to the bathroom, or something happened and like you were jabbering me and you expect me to respond instantly. It's not always going to happen. So try to be flexible in that way. And that leads me to essentially a little bit of a trick and tool here that I use as a way to cope with senior management if the senior management is not very reasonable, or I don't know, doesn't have good expectations for those that work from home. And that is, I have had, so not my current job, but I've had at other institutions, and I've talked to friends that have felt similar stresses, where you feel like you're being monitored constantly and you can't do anything. Like I can't run to the bathroom for more than 2 minutes, because if you do, like someone's messaging you, like, where are you at? Why aren't you online? So one trick, which I don't think employers are going to like, but you need to think about it from a little different perspective here, is I always have essentially an excuse baked into my head. Getting coffee for me is the excuse. Why? Because when I'm in the office and 90% of the time when you can't find me, I probably ran to coffee. I'm either meeting someone for coffee, I'm in the break room getting coffee, right? It's going to be coffee related in general. When I work from home though, let's say that I'm taking my lunch, and I don't take my lunch too scheduled, but I try to take it around noon. Sometimes I don't take it till 1:30, 1:45. So if I'm taking a lunch and I eat quickly and I have extra time, right, what do you do with your extra time? Because I already mentioned you should keep your breaks and your lunches separated from work. So you have that time, take it. But let's say that, like, what I like to do is I play Battlefield 5. So for those of you that don't know, it's a video game, right? So I'm playing a video game. If I take my lunch at 12:45 and I have an hour lunch, for example, and I eat lunch in 15 minutes, now it's 1 o'clock, I've still got 45 minutes to kind of do something. If I'm playing Battlefield 5, for example, or let's say, I went to the grocery store, or I'm talking to a parent or a spouse or, a sibling or something on the phone, right? Most senior management in an office would be like highly offended, like, oh, you're playing a video game like during work hours? This is terrible, right? But you need to relax and realize that that's your employee's time, right? It shouldn't matter what they do in their lunch. Another example would be, let's say like you message me like, where are you? I'm like, oh, I've been at the mall shopping, right? The mall's like, 5 minutes down the road from me. Managers are going to be upset. Like, why are you doing this on work time? Why are you like not doing your office job? And why aren't you focused? Again, management needs to step back and realize that's their lunchtime. They can do whatever they want. But again, if you have management that does not understand, it is good to have a more reasonable excuse in mind. Like, oh, where were you at? I was at lunch, right? It's technically true. It's not exactly what I was doing. But having something kind of ready for you, I think, helps to smooth over the difference in understanding between working from home and those that are kind of stuck in the old office ways that think that you should be like, grinding out, maximizing your hours and, not taking your lunches or whatnot. So that's just another tip that I like to use, and a trick that I teach people that feel overly stressed from micromanagement. And then finally, make sure you are at every single meeting you were supposed to be at. So I'm not somebody to preach this, because I sometimes am late to meetings or miss a meeting. Again, I try not to. But if you miss meetings or you're late to meetings, it looks bad on you in the office. It looks even worse on you when you work from home, because people just assume you're screwing off. No other way to say it. You could be essentially working on a report. So again, like I mentioned, I have 2 laptops. I work for 2 divisions. So I'm working on project A on this laptop and I'm working away. And then all of a sudden, like, I need to switch gears and I have a meeting that was on the other laptop. And of course, IT has it set up so you can't share your calendars. That's an IT security risk. So I can't figure it out half the time. I'm trying to switch. But if you're late to meetings or you're like miss the meeting or whatever, it just does not look good. So make sure that you check your schedule constantly. Again, like you probably should be doing in the office. But again, this is one of my weaknesses, so I figured I'd point it out. Okay, and to wrap this video up here on just a few other takeaways here, little tips. One is that I really like working from home because it's healthier, like I mentioned, but also I like to integrate it with my life. So I don't like working somewhere where I feel like, I don't know, it's a 9 to 5. I only do the bare minimum. I just give you the 8 hours or 9 to 5:30, whatever. I give you the 8 hours here. And here's your 8 hours. Here's my 40 hours. I'm done. And I go home and forget everything. I actually like what I do. I love my job. It's a career for me, not necessarily a job. So I try to be involved as much as possible. Working from home, though, really makes it more personal in the sense that I feel like I can control my time. So sometimes I'm not busy, sometimes I'll go do something I might not be work related, so I can flex my hours around. So I don't know, I took a half hour off to mow my yard real quick, but then I'm also working an extra hour afterwards because, that project I was waiting on didn't come in from my other colleague until, late in the afternoon. So being flexible is pretty easy, and I like that it integrates in my life in that way where, getting my job done and my work tasks are the same as getting my personal tasks done. And that leads me to talk about PTO, so paid time off, vacation, whatever you want to call it. Make sure you take it. So a lot of times people will feel like working from home is so flexible and so lenient and so great and wonderful that they don't really need time off. And so when they take vacation days or whatever, if they're at home, they'll get a few work things done, and then they'll also, go do some fun stuff, and then they'll be back checking their emails. Do not do this. It will burn you out. Again, that integration into your life is awesome, and it makes you feel more connected to your job, but also that excessive stress and the tiredness to work constantly will kill you. I'll tell you, you can do it for a while, and eventually it will kill you. I've struggled with it on and off from my working from home experiences, but again, setting up these boundaries and trying to take PTO days, for example, is a very crucial part in making it a fun, enjoyable experience, but also being more productive. Again, just take the PTO days as you would normally take them, and do not sign in to your work computer. Do not log in. Do not call anybody. You're on vacation. Okay, and a few tips here for corporations or managers here. You need to get out of the hourly mindset if you are managing salary employees. I don't think we've broken this. So historically, right, the way the education system is set up, the way the work environment is set up, there's clocks on the walls. There's usually timers and bells for schools, for example. And it's a manufacturing setup, right? You all come in, you sit down, you go to class, then you're done. Working, same way you clock in, right? You work 9 to 9, 9 to 5, 30, whatever, and you're done. We need to get away from this mindset because you have to realize these employees are not hourly. Surprise, that's what salary is. You expect them to work extra hours. If you work from home, making them work extra hours or having more flexibility in their work schedule is a trade-off, but it also allows them to work more hours. Jobs, though, should be defined when you hire people by what needs to be done. So your job is to cover this position. Your job is to do these things. And you should go through that and hold them to that. But baking people into this 9 to 5 a lot of times is not beneficial. Again, if you're like an online customer service person, you have to be on there from specific hours. That makes complete sense. But for people in other jobs, I think we get into this mindset where you nitpick the hours and you grind people. Luckily, I have not had to deal with this in my current career, but in past lives and other like non-quant finance jobs, it's been a little different. And I think when employers and managers nickel and dime you and track every minute and every hour, it creates a lot of stress on the employer and the employee. Again, you should have a set of expectations of what you expect from a job, and things should be task focused and not hourly focused. Are you getting your job done? Great, that's what I hired you to do, right? It shouldn't be that, you worked 40 hours because all of a sudden you're not getting your job done. Then you should probably be working longer hours, right? Or we hired the wrong person, or you need more training, or we should essentially optimize, automate, do something different to make it more feasible. But again, when you hire people, you should have an expectation before they start, and holding them to that project-based fulfillment of the job, I think, is a more important focus that working from home kind of focuses more on, instead of just hourly and making sure people are online and tracking them. And then finally, if you don't really want to work from home or you have issues with employees working from home, what would I do? Just tie it to your annual review. Simple as that. So every year corporations have goals for employees, or at least you should. Those that perform above a specific level should just be granted working from home options. Those that don't perform well, so maybe they tried working from home or they work in the office and they don't perform well, you probably just don't give them working from home opportunities, because if you're not going to perform well in the office, you're not going to perform well at home. But that comes back to you as a manager, as a corporation. Are you hiring the right people? Are you hiring motivated people? Are you managing them correctly? Are you setting expectations right? There's a lot that bakes into this. But again, working from home could be a benefit as well. So not just a job specific thing that everybody gets. It could also be performance related. Anyways, those are my tips and tricks and ways to think about working from home. I do hope the industry in general, like the whole global economy, will move more towards it. I think it is far more beneficial. I think it can be less stressful if done correctly and if companies get the right tools. Some companies track their employees. I think this is just poor management in general, right? You're micromanaging and tracking them because you hired the wrong people or you can't manage, right? It's just a lot of negative aspects, I think, that go into it. Just for example, in my job, I do a lot of reading. So I might not be online, but I'm reading documentation and paperwork and filling stuff out. So I'm not a big fan of the micromanagement here. But again, these are my tips and tricks for working from home. Thank you for listening. And as always, until next time.